Welcome to Health Bites. Thank you everyone for joining us. It is my pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Abigail Phillips. Dr. Phillips is an assistant professor in the School of Information Studies at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. Her general research interests include youth, social media, cyberbullying, empathy, librarianship, librarians, Maker EDU, neurodiversity, advocacy, and mental health. In today's Health Bites, Dr. Phillips will give a presentation on youth perception of online harassment, cyberbullying, and just drama, avenues for support and guidance. Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for being our guest speaker this morning, and I will turn everything over to you.
Oh, thank you so much for having me here. I think I should go ahead and turn off my email so you won't have that noise. Thank you again. I'm really excited today to talk a bit about cyberbullying and some about LAS mental health and how librarians can help cyberbullied youth and how they can help other adults who are being cyberbullied, because it's not always just youth. This is just my contact information will be later, but if you're on Twitter, I'm over there quite a bit. So there's my Twitter handle. I'm an assistant professor at the School of Information Studies up in at the University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. So I'm right here in Milwaukee in a beautiful day. So I'll go ahead and get started. Let's see. Can I make the slide go?
Yes, remember you was going to share your screen, Dr. Phillips.
Oh, thank you. I'm trying to remember too many things.
It should be like a little green box.
Yes, there we go. Okay, so here we go. Going great this morning. Okay, first I wanted to talk about traditional bullying versus cyberbullying, because they're two very distinct things, but there's a lot of overlap as well. With traditional bullying, this is the face-to-face bullying that people think of maybe in a school ground. There's a power imbalance between the bully, and this is usually physical. So I guess think of the stereotypical football player versus someone who's really tiny, a little bit of a nerd. But there's a power imbalance between the bully and the victim. The bullying behavior is repeated over. I apologize for the background noise. There's a jet going across me. The bullying behavior is repeated over time, so it happens like every single day or a couple times a week, but it's consistent. And the intention is to cause harm. There's always that intent to not just to tease, but more to actually cause harm. And it can be perpetuated by an individual or groups. Sometimes kids or even adults will gang up, it can be individual bullying. And what's important in traditional bullying is there's this face-to-face interaction. It happens at school, in your community, at church, at wherever, but it is face-to-face interaction. But this first is contrast with cyberbullying, which is the bully can remain anonymous. So you may not even know the person. They may hide behind some kind of another identity, like it's so easy to happen on the internet. And the bullying behavior, much like traditional bullying, is repeated over time. It happens again and again, but what is unique in cyberbullying is that since it's on the internet, it has the ability to spread very far. It goes across community lines or city lines or state lines, but it can just go nationally or internationally. So the repetition over time is a little bit different in this situation. Again, there's an intention to cause harm, and it can be perpetuated by individuals or groups, just like with traditional bullying. I've seen instances, or teens have told me about instances where a group will form some kind of Instagram account and try to go against some of their fellow classmates and do like the uglies of so-and-so school or the pretties of so-and-so school. So you don't know who these people maybe are, or maybe there are rumors that who these people are, but it can still be perpetuated by a group or an individual and still remain anonymous. And the bullying occurs through an electronic device or online. So in a discussion board, or through texting, or largely on social media when you're thinking about cyberbullying. And then the biggest difference between cyberbullying is that it can occur anytime, anywhere. So you don't have a safe space. You can't just go home and avoid the cyberbullying or avoid the bullying, because it's everywhere. Okay, what is cyberbullying? So we already talked a little bit about the differences between traditional bullying and cyberbullying, but I wanted to give a couple of really distinct differences with cyberbullying. It's hyped a lot in popular media. You still see tragic cases that involved suicide or some sort of legal action. There are very huge cases that involve a lot of sadness, but that doesn't happen. It's not quite as common as it seems like in the media, but that's a media literacy issue there. Often it's just what you may have experienced yourself with bullying. It's just an everyday situation. More recently, there's been a push towards anti-cyberbullying legislation. As far as I know, to date, there's just Utah and Washington State that have anti-cyberbullying bills or some kind of statute on paper. So other states may involve like a school policy or a community policy or something like that. But really the only legislation that has come out from those two states, partially because it's so hard to track and know which state it belongs to. There's also the disinhibition effect. This means a person can remain anonymous or semi-anonymous, like they can have different identities, and disinhibition effect gives them, since there is that different distance between the two, it gives them a sense that they're not really causing harm. They're not really doing anything. It kind of cuts off some of the guilt you might feel otherwise if you were doing this to somebody face to face. You could see the reaction. They might cry or be upset, but you would see that. But with the online environment, it isn't so. So this can go on through texting, on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, secret discussion boards. It happens, but it can happen so many places. And there's also many different forms, from harassment to, I can never pronounce this word correctly, denigration, and flaming, impersonation, outing, trickery, and stalking. So there's a bit of cyber stalking that can go on within cyberbullying. But for the most part, a lot of that happens is harassment and consistent harassment online. To continue defining cyberbullying, especially when you're thinking about youth, they have many, many different names. So cyberbullying isn't really a consistent name. You'll find, especially if you look at the research, this online violence, online bullying, electronic bullying, online harassment. More commonly, can be known as cyberbullying, but it also has many different definitions. So I've read a number of different definitions, especially within the research community. You really want to have one consistent definition of something. So cyberbullying is lacking that. And why does it matter? In some cases, it makes a huge difference to tell really how many people are being cyberbullied or not. Maybe one individual doesn't refer to that as cyberbullying. They may refer to it as something else. And you're not getting a great measurement of what actually is going on or a better understanding of what's going on without that solid definition. But my go-to definition is by Takunga, and cyberbullying is any behavior performed through electronic or digital media by individuals or groups that repeatedly communicates hostile or aggressive messages intended to inflict harm or discomfort on others. So I think I like this definition because it kind of covers a little bit of everything. Covers the media that it goes through, electronic or digital media, the intention of causing harm, and hostile and aggressive messages. So that harassment that goes on. So what do youth and adults call cyberbullying? Because they go by, they're kind of seen as two different things. So with teenagers, it's just drama. So that's a combination of gossip, bullying, and other aggressive type behaviors. So the drama that goes on is just it's not bullying really at all. It's just everyday thing that happens. It's also a gendered process that perpetuates gendered norms. It's typically occurs among girls. So you have very stereotypical images of girls and the kind of behaviors that they engage in or may engage in or are said to engage in. And it's about saving face. So by calling it drama, you're not a victim. So you're not being hurt. It's just something that happens every day. It's an everyday behavior. It's nothing to get upset about or freak out about, but it's just drama. But with adults, they call it bullying or cyberbullying. So you have teen language that is drama. So you may ask a teenager if they're being cyberbullied, and to them it isn't cyberbullying, even though it kind of fits everything that you would describe as cyberbullying. But to them, it's just drama because they do want to save face. They don't want to be a victim, and they don't want to see themselves as being victimized. So in reality, it's really nothing new, but it's just been changed by online networks. So it's changed by social media and the ability of media to be everywhere and at any time, especially now with phones, now that we're so connected. Okay, cyberbullying as an information ethics issue. There's digital literacy, digital citizenship that both come into play. And digital literacy is the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communication information requiring both cognitive and technical skills. So when you're looking at cyberbullying, you're looking at people's understanding of what is going on online, like how they are interpreting it, how they're using their critical thinking skills to evaluate the information. So that's where the whole fake news movement comes into play. And they're also have a better understanding of their evaluation techniques. So how are they able to look at the information? How are they creating information? What information are they creating? Where are they sharing it? How are they communicating it? And digital citizenship. So these are the norms and appropriate responsible behavior with regard to technology use. So these are by Mark Ripple, who is a pretty Ribble, sorry. These are pretty well known in the community of cyberbullying, digital citizenship, this idea that we're all members of a society that is online and engaged and going on 24/7. So these different norms are what we ascribe to participate in an online community and do so ethically. So, and I already mentioned the disinhibition effect, which can be anonymous or pseudo-anonymous. Once again, there's that ability that you kind of know who a person is, but you may not entirely. It's just somebody can feel anonymous, but really they can be tracked to some degree. And I did want to talk a little bit about the connections to LAS mental health, because it's such an important topic in our field. And I don't think we quite talk enough about our own mental health, the mental health of those we serve, the mental health of basically anyone around us, and how our jobs impact that mental health. So there's if you're on Twitter at all, there's this hashtag LAS mental health that's really popular, that kind of reveals some of the behind the scenes of what people are dealing with on the job or just in everyday life regarding their mental health. So cyberbullying in the workplace and beyond. A lot of people think that cyberbullying is solely teenager behavior, but it really isn't. It happens in the workplace. I've had colleagues before mention that the way they like, whether it's through emails or just face-to-face interaction with some bullying going on, or trash talk on Twitter or Facebook or some sort of social media, cyberbullying does go on, and bullying goes on. I've experienced it myself as a young librarian, and it verged onto really serious harassment. So I did want to make a note that cyberbullying just isn't only a teen activity. It happens among adults, surprisingly enough. But when you really think about it, with what adult behaviors like gossip and just talking about one another and maybe teasing one another, that still hasn't entirely gone away in adulthood. It's just not looked at as bullying anymore. So there's a serious impact of cyberbullying on mental health. And this is particularly true in teenagers, because their brains are still developing and they're still growing. There's lowered self-esteem, depression, shame, anxiety, fear, anger, hopelessness, and there's even more. I didn't want to fill up the screen with the huge impact that cyberbullying, or even, I don't want to leave out bullying as well, face-to-face bullying on mental health, because these everyday behaviors eventually erode away at your confidence in yourself and your ability to see that there's something to live for in the future. And with these such serious mental illnesses, it's important to recognize just how impactful bullying can be. So some lifelong impacts. So depression, anxiety, there's suicidal tendencies and suicidal ideation, incredibly decreased job satisfaction, the work being satisfied with what's going on in your personal life as well. There's an increased mental strain, everything. If you suffered from depression, you probably know the increased mental strain of just having so much you feel like you have to do, but you just can't do it because you're dealing with a chronic illness. So these lifelong impacts are directly related to the impacts that happen due to cyberbullying, especially when you're thinking about teenagers. That lowered self-esteem kind of continues until it turns into depression or anxiety or both. So what do we need when we're engaging with, when we're thinking about teenagers or even other adults? We need empathy, compassion, understanding, and active listening, really paying attention to what the other person is saying, asking the questions that need to be asked, just encouraging that person to open up or talk, or open up as much as they're comfortable with. But I feel like empathy is such a huge component to the ability to kind of experience to a certain degree what the other person is experiencing is a real valued, is something that's I value a lot in individuals, and I think is a really valuable technique in working with people on an everyday basis, working with patrons or working with your colleagues. So some resources and avenues of support, and this can be for you or somebody else. Anybody really needs these. Family and friends, therapists. I go to a therapist every week, so I have for a really long time. It's hopefully it's becoming, people aren't feeling as much shame going to a therapist as they seem to have in the past. It's just a way to kind of self-care, take care of yourself. Peers and online groups, whether that's peers as in face-to-face peers, like your maybe coworkers or people outside of work, maybe that might be ideal. Having somebody to talk to outside of work. An organization, employers, and human resources. Human resources is a little bit of a difficult situation it can be a little bit challenging to deal with, and so much that sometimes you run out of personal time to leave or sick leave, but you're still dealing with depression or anxiety. But so human resources sometimes can't be of service there. I think it's a work in progress. We're trying to all work together. And LAS mental health. We already talked a little bit about this. This is something I'm involved with LAS mental health. It's a zine that we create. I don't know why I put this in. Sorry, I'll go ahead and skip this. So these are all my references. And that is it for me today. If you would like to reach out, please reach out by email or by Twitter, or just I have a website that you can comment and I'll reach out. I love talking to people. So if you would like to know more. I think that's it.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips, for that presentation. Now we'd like to open it up for any questions. If you have any questions, you can please send them to me directly. And while we're waiting on questions, Dr. Phillips, I do have a couple of questions. The first question, states, do you have a recommended reading for more information on disinhibition effect?
I do. I'm trying to think of a book off the top of my mind, but I mostly learned about it through different journal articles. But if you type, I was going to bring up one of my go-to books. If you leave your email, I can send you an email about what I'm reading about when I'm reading about disinhibition effect, because it's a really interesting phenomenon. If you'll leave your email, I'll copy it down or send it to me. Okay. Or send them.
And the next question is, how do you identify cyberbullying in the workplace?
That is a really great question. You can see it in some of the, mostly on the social media pages, and the way in which colleagues are talking about one another, either through email chains or, yeah, you just have to pay, you can tell through the way in which people are engaging online and directly towards each other, the words they're using. It is much like with teenage cyberbullying. It can be hard to identify unless there's a direct threat. Sometimes it's just casual teasing or poking fun, or what the other person may perceive as poking fun. Maybe they're not intending on cyberbullying their colleague or a colleague somewhere else, but it does come across that way.
Thank you. We have another question. Do you have any ideas how to assist teens or resources for them?
Definitely. I think with teenagers, what's most important is that active listening and really listening to what they're saying. Teens naturally aren't going to just come up to you and tell you they're cyberbullying or they're being cyberbullied or they're being bullied, but probably not. It hasn't been my experience. Usually they'll just casually mention something that's going on. So that really listening to a patron is one of the most important things you can do, I think. As far as resources, there's tons of resources, especially some for every kind of, all the different kinds of teens that are out there. There's a crisis text line that's really great for like on the spot, an on the spot need. I'm trying to think of, it's not like the suicide hotline, but it's the same idea as you can text them a question or a problem, or the teen could text them a question or a problem, and they would respond immediately with just through texting, which may be the most comfortable venue for a teenager. They may prefer that over calling somebody and trying to get help. There's different organizations online that help with cyberbullying and help with media literacy and learning more about what's going on right now with media. Common Sense Media is a great place to go to. That's going to give you some guidance on cyberbullying, as well as digital citizenship and media literacy and digital media literacy. I'm trying to think of some other organizations. Those are the ones that come to the top of my head. The Trevor Project for LGBTQ youth and adults, they have a crisis line as well, or they have a website that a teenager could go to, or some of this a teen may end up discovering them for themselves. But for the most part, I think really active listening and being empathetic are the most important components to really help somebody and help teenagers especially.
We have another question. Can you give a couple of scenarios, examples that show the appropriate boundaries that library staff should have with the bullied teen we want to help but not overstep?
Yeah, it's a common, when I talk to other librarians about cyberbullying, because you aren't a therapist, you're not, we're not therapists, we're not trained to be therapists. Or we're not social workers. That's why it's really great to see more social workers entering into the library. But I know that really depends on if your library has a budget for that. But I think maintaining a professionalism is important. I think you can know your own boundaries. You can figure them out for yourself. I think providing a teen with information, maybe slyly, or not slyly, but putting stuff in the bathroom about like domestic abuse, cyberbullying, phone numbers and links or QR codes or whatever, those might be helpful. Just providing information kind of without directly providing it, just leaving it out there for patrons to take, maybe in a teen center or or even having some information about cyberbullying within the collection. And then I've seen, I think everybody's probably by now seen the list. If you work in public libraries at all, or go to public libraries, see the not controversial topics, but just crisis topics or topics in need of, in the Dewey Decimal, the little banner that goes down, the banner that I've seen on the side of a book kiosks about abuse, suicide, anxiety, depression, cyberbullying. So those are some, those are some very basic ideas. I think just having information ready and available is important. And again, going back to, I think you'll know internally your boundaries, because once again, we shouldn't be offering therapy to our patrons.
I have another question. Do intervention methods for younger kids through middle grades, for example, differ from methods used with teens?
Oh, that's a great question. The ideal, if you go to Common Sense Media, they talk about this a lot, about it's really better to work with young children with intervention. It should be something that starts as early as possible in kindergarten, like you would with intervention methods for other things. But they do differ because you're kind of trying, it's a little bit less intervention and more just trying to help with what's going on. It's kind of a little late to really try to intervene to a certain extent about trying to, in the extent of trying to make sure there's no more bullies, try to convince teens to be kind and nice to each other, or if so, in the long run, we're all kind and nice to each other. But so in that respect, they do differ. And yeah, it's really important for middle grades or even earlier to really start with the intervention work.
Do you have a list of organizations a school could access if they have a bullying problem?
I don't have one. I have my own list, but I can email a list or put it on my website. It's not something I have readily available, but that's a great idea.
Could you provide tips for working with bullies?
I think in many, I didn't mention this, but in many situations, bullies are often being bullied themselves. So it's kind of this bully victim situation. So they are dealing with their own traumas or anxiety, depression. So I think it's best to work with them like you would with a teen that's being cyberbullying, with empathy and compassion and that active listening and trying to engage with them and figure out, do they realize that they're bullying? Do they realize that the things that they say are hurting somebody else? But yeah, it can be a little bit tricky when dealing with bullies because you don't know if they're being bullied themselves. And again, it isn't uncommon for that to happen, that to be the situation, that bully victim role, and you have the bully role, and then the bully role, and then just the plain victim role. Sorry, jumbled up my words there.
What evidence-based curricula would you suggest / recommend to address bullying and cyberbullying?
Yeah, the evidence-based curriculum that's a difficult question. I'll have to think about that because most of my work isn't with schools, so I haven't developed curriculum. But Common Sense Media has developed curriculum directly for teachers working with trying to introduce media literacy, trying to talk about cyberbullying. So they have a whole curriculum there. And that is evidence-based. It's just, I don't think there's quite a as much as I would hope for curriculum. And my area of concentration is not curriculum. But I would check out Common Sense Media and see what they have, even though it's targeted towards teachers and not maybe school librarians or public librarians. But it's a lot of school librarians do use it. When I've done interviews with them, that's what they do default to, I think, in many situations, because there isn't anything else out there. That's just the impression that I get.
Thank you. We have time for 1 to 2 more questions. If you have a question, you can put them in the chat or send them to me directly. As we're waiting on more questions, I have a question. Dr. Phillips, how did you get started in this type of research? I know this is a very unique topic.
Yes. Oh, my chair of my committee knew I was interested in social media and the ways in which teenagers use online formats, and so she found an interview with the author about Emily Bazelon, who is also done some work on cyberbullying. And so I started to read that, and somehow I realized that I had been bullied as a kid and a teenager. So part of it's kind of a passion project, because I don't want other teenagers and children to be bullied, because it's such a awful experience. But it was just not funny, but it's interesting to realize that you were bullied as a teen through doing research as a doctoral student. But so that's my interest in it. I just have a personal connection. I want to see how this can be, I don't know about it can be solved, but how it can be, how people can be helped for the most part. I think that's it.
We have one last question. What gives you the greatest hope as you look into the future of cyberbullying and available resources?
And available resources?
Okay. Available resources.
I think, I don't know if resources exactly have given me a lot of, I don't know, I've seen hope there as much as I've seen hope in some of the movements that have been going on in online platforms like Instagram and TikTok. But this message of spreading kindness and spreading hope and spreading a sense of compassion towards one another, I think that's what gives me the most hope, is just what I'm seeing with teenagers and adults engaging online. Is there's a lot of negativity still online, a whole lot, but there is a lot to be said for the spread of positivity, or not the toxic positivity that can happen, but just the spread of optimism, I guess, and hope. And again, empathy and compassion for one another. Me seeing that online does give me hope.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. The fact that we can have this conversation, I think that gives me hope, and that's a start to great beginnings. Thank you again for that wonderful presentation. It was a pleasure to have you with us this morning.
Thank you so much.
We have just a few more items to cover before we end today's session. First, we're going to collect some demographic information for reporting purposes. Please follow the link Bailey has put into the chat box. It's completely anonymous, but it will help us report out the impact of these webinars. The first question asks for your zip code. The second is if you are attending as a group. If you are a solo attendee, please feel free to skip this question. If for whatever reason you are unable to access the poll, please enter your zip code into the chat box. When you are finished with the question, please click the submit button to record your answer.